Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson. I'll be your host. And as per usual, for this final one of the season, I'm joined by Scott and Joris. Scott and Joris, how are you guys doing this evening?
Hey guys, hello everyone. And isn't a week a long time in football? There is a massive amount that's happened since we last sat down together. And lucky enough for all of you, we're about to talk about all of it.
It even seems to be working in our favor that we're sitting down just one day later than usual, 1 or 2 days later than usual, and everything is happening, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to talk about. So much to talk about that we're probably not even going to talk about the football that happened on the weekend that much because, as people know, like every game was basically a dead rubber. I will go over the score lines though, just to satisfy ourselves in terms of keeping up appearances. Mechelen and Genk played out a 0-0, despite, as Joris said, Genk should have scored about 5, but didn't score any. So that one finished 0-0. Ghent Charleroi took place at the same time, which actually was quite an entertaining game. I watched a bit of it and both teams were going for it. It finished 2-1 to Charleroi. Golizadze gave them the lead. Ngadu and Gajay gave Ghent the equaliser in the 40th minute before Dan Heymans scored the winner in the 92nd minute. Over to the championship round, Union hosted Antwerp to round off the season. That one finished 1-0 to Antwerp. Mikkel Frey, who else getting on the score sheet there? Club Brugge celebrating the title in front of their fans. Skov Olsen gave them the lead in the 39th minute. But Jack Henry thought, you know what? End of the season, let's give out a couple of gifts. He gave Anderlecht a gift to score an own goal in 87th. So that one finished 1 apiece. And little known to us, that may be, and probably is more than likely, Vincent Kompany's last game in charge of Anderlecht. We have actually timed this quite well because it looks like some news is going to be broken during the episode. So we're almost bringing you breaking news, even though technically you'll probably listen to this a few days later, so it'll be delayed. But just think at the time it was breaking news and we brought it to you first, probably second, who knows, probably the 10th time you'd have heard it by the time we get round to it. Anyway, guys, I think not much to talk about with the football on the weekend. I think we can kind of forgive ourselves for ignoring it and just heading straight to the news, which has just been, there's just been a lot, hasn't there? A lot of managerial changes. Scott, you've been very busy trying to take them all in. I'm not sure if you've even been able to take them all in, and we'll probably have to jump in and try and help you during this section. Let's start then with Salang. We knew that they were looking for a new manager, and they have gone for an easy one for me to pronounce. Jose Junacamps, 55. Thank you. See, this is, just jump in first next time, man. Just save me. Belgian 55-year-old manager, most recently manager of Mouscron, the now defunct Mouscron, now amateur Mouscron. Managed quite a lot in Belgium, been assistant manager for a couple of teams like Metz. You can see the link coming there. Charlton as well, has managed Salang previously. Scott, over to you on this one. What do we know about him? What should Salang fans or people that are interested in Salang think looking ahead to next season?
Well, I think the first thing to say about this one and Jose Junachamps is he does have a previous connection with Serang, and not only Serang, but Serang's parent club, Metz. He spent some time at Metz actually as the T2 there for quite a long period. Actually, he was the T2 there for 3 years between 2012 and 2015. So he knows the kind of Metz infrastructure quite well. A lot of the same people actually are still in place, even if the coaches there have changed. And of course, those who know their Walloon football will know that actually he is a previous Serang head coach. He was at Serang for a little bit over 6 months back in 2016 before he got lured to become an assistant at Charlton in the Championship at that point. But, you know, he's got a long-standing history with Belgian football. Jose Junachamps has been around a bit. You know, he's obviously most recently been at Mouscron and done a good job there, actually, under very well publicised, extremely difficult conditions. Came in initially as an assistant to Enzo Schifo, who needs no introduction whatsoever. Unfortunately, Enzo's very, very short tenure as head coach there, which only lasted a couple of months way back at the start of the season, saw them not win a game under. He then stepped up and really rescued Mouscron's season on the pitch, at least, and they finished kind of mid-table in 1B, pretty respectably in the end, considering how it looked like their season was panning out. But he also spent some time at Antwerp. He worked under Frankie Verkouteren there recently as well. He was part of his staff. He was also at Leuven a year or so ago, working under Vincent Everard, who's now at Molenbeek, of course. Spent time at Cercle, both as caretaker manager and as T2 under Frankie Verkouteren and somebody called Bernd Storck, who we will come back to shortly. He also has a bit of a history with Standard too. He was kind of caretaker manager there in 2017 for a little while after Alexander Jankovic left the club. A couple of spells at Standard as well. He was there as the under-21 coach for 4 years between 2008 and 12. So he's got quite an interesting and experienced CV, and I can understand why they've gone for him. Actually, he knows the club. He knows the difficulties the club are facing, and because of Metz's own relegation, how they're going to approach the recruitment is going to have to change. So if Serang are going to go down the recruit young Belgian players route, which may be what they have to do now, then Jose probably is quite a good appointment, because he does have a track record of working with young players at Mouscron and some of the other clubs, particularly at Standard as well, with the under-21s there. So I think this is not a bad fit, but he's got a big job in his hands.
Yeah, absolutely massive job on his hands. But I completely agree, Scott. I think going down that route does just kind of make sense. And it's like they said, isn't it? They knew they're going to have to do the Belgian side of recruitment and stuff like that. So going for someone who's just been managing in 1B, maybe they're thinking, we can try and snag a few players there. Obviously, with Mouscron going down and what has happened to them, you're probably looking at that squad as well, thinking, well, I wonder who's going to turn up from there. Maybe we see another year of Teddy Chevalier in the top flight. Personally, I haven't seen many of their games this season, but there are probably a couple of players that have been in 1A that maybe will come back in if Serang have come in to offer them, and maybe they enjoyed working with him, and he clearly did get the best out of some of those players when he was there. But he's got a really big job, and I mean, they're just such a wait and see at the moment with Serang to see where they'll go in that sense. But good luck to him. Apologies to kind of cut this little roundup short, but we have finally had the confirmation from Anderlecht of the news around Vincent Kompany. They literally just released a statement now, basically saying club and coach have analysed the past season, discussed plans for the future. Two parties have decided to part ways in mutual consent. Decision was taken with a lot of mutual respect and gratitude for everything that has been achieved together. Vincent Kompany says, today only one feeling prevails. I'm proud that I was able to start this new chapter at the club of my heart. I've now been a player and a coach of RSC Anderlecht, but above all, I remain a loyal fan. Peter Verbeek, the CEO, Vincent was an essential part in rebuilding a renewed RSC Anderlecht. He brought professionalism and expertise and has also been important in the development of young players. The club will continue to build on these foundations. President Walter van den Hout, the club and the coach can be proud of their collaboration, feel confident about our futures. Vincent Kompany will succeed without Anderlecht, and Anderlecht will succeed without Vincent Kompany. So basically a whole lot of nothing there. We can kind of get literally nothing out of that as to what has actually gone on at the club, because let's just say this has kind of come very quickly today, hasn't it? I mean, the talk with Burnley, it looks like he's going to Burnley. We've known that that's been a rumour for a while. There was a rumour linking him with Wolfsburg, but they've gone down the Niko Kovac route. So when that one didn't materialise and when Burnley got relegated, in my mind, I was like, okay, well, he's just going to stay at Anderlecht anyway, because Wolfsburg may have been an interesting prospect because it's the Bundesliga, but Burnley in the Championship, is that really where he wants to go? However, it looks like there's been a lot of disagreement and stuff going on behind the scenes that has just completely deteriorated in today and led to this situation where he's going to Burnley. And no offence to Burnley, but it doesn't feel like the big move in his career, moving into a bigger club or anything like that, does it? I mean, Championship football, yes, they'll have the parachute payments, and yes, he may be in a league that he knows and stuff like that, but so the Championship's a lot of pressure, and there'll be a lot of pressure on Burnley and him to get promoted straight away. He's also going to completely change their style of play. Yes, they'll still play 4-4-2, but it's not going to be the 4-4-2 that Burnley fans have known. But yeah, what's your kind of immediate reaction to this? Anything else that you guys have heard going on behind the scenes, just to kind of explain why this has happened? Because for me, I just can't really get my head around him leaving Anderlecht, the club that he loves, and going to Burnley. Like, it just doesn't feel right.
Well, whether he goes to Burnley, we still have to see. Maybe we can give confirmation on that later this episode. But that's why I'm not gonna comment too much on that. But why he's leaving Anderlecht? Well, apparently there's been some internal struggle, power struggle still going on at Anderlecht. Since these rumors have come out in the past few days, yeah, and just he doesn't want to leave Anderlecht. Whatever they will say, I can assure you that from that my source is just on being on the Anderlecht forum, but then quite an insider there. I'll give him here because I'll do with that information what you want, but. I do trust his source really because he's also closely connected to the whole company clan. Just it's not his decision. They're now. I don't know what's happening there. I think the either Verbeke or Van den Houten, probably, or maybe both, and maybe in combination with Moneyman Mark Koeken, expected a bit too much too soon. It's just a ridiculous decision in my mind, and yeah, it's a bit. Even when I'm not an Anderlecht fan, I would. If I would be an Anderlecht fan, I would now be very angry at my board and really go crazy on them. But also the second time he's leaving the club last as a player, he was a bit pushed towards HSV as well, and so twice not the farewells that he deserved probably. And a bit of a blow to the romanticism in football again as well, I guess. That's also why I'm even as a supporter of a different club. Yeah, feel for everyone that is not supporting this decision as well. But yeah, definitely internal power struggles at the board and between the board and company. Of course, also in addition to if it would become Burnley, okay, I'll give a little comment on that. And yes, there is the factor that it's only a 1 hour drive from Manchester, where his wife and is from, and his kids mostly grew up. So I guess there is something to say there. Ridiculous, crazy decision, and it's very bad, very weird. I think there's really something wrong with the expectations in the boardroom at Anderlecht at the moment already. That I guess that's the gist of it.
Yeah, I had a feeling, guys, that this might happen a few weeks ago. I mean, when the Burnley rumours first surfaced, probably, I don't know, around 3 or 4 weeks ago now, Big Vinny was asked about it at a press conference, of course, and he laughed it off and said, finally a rumour. And I thought the fact that he didn't take any kind of opportunity to shut that down, even just gently, at that press conference, or even attempt to, I thought that was really, really interesting. And I did say at the time on my own social media that this is interesting that he's chose not to do that. It looks like there have been secret talks ongoing probably since round about then. So that this has been coming, and I just had a feeling that something was in the air. I think Joris is right. I think the internal kind of politics at Anderlecht are a big factor in this. As is Big Vinny's own personal situation, with his family from Manchester, his wife's from Manchester, and I think that's definitely a factor in this decision. But there's another thing here as well about, and this reminds me of when Brendan Rodgers left my own team, Celtic. There was a huge uproar about that because that story broke before it became official, and huge numbers of people said he's never going to leave this club to go to that club. It makes no sense. Fans tend to react in a very emotive way to these things, which is totally understandable, actually. But I think football has completely changed now in that sometimes going to a club that might not be seen to be as big, if you like, or have as much prestige, actually in football and career progression terms can and does make sense. The game is quite different now. I know Burnley are now a championship club, but the money that they have puts them in a position where, for example, they're able to sign players that Anderlecht would actually quite like to sign. That doesn't mean that they will sign, but they have finances that only Anderlecht could dream of in reality, which is the sort of bizarre situation that everyone kind of finds himself in. And I think if you are Vinny and you're in this situation where you're facing an internal power struggle, which is kind of pushing you out the door, even if you don't want it on one side, and a club who really want you, who are prepared to throw money at you, even if it's a league that you wouldn't necessarily choose to go to initially, what it means is if you do well there, the chances of you being able to get a seat at the top table at the Premier League increase a lot. So it's about juggling, I suppose, the right time for a move, and sometimes that right time is forced upon you, a bit like it has been here with kind of Vinny, and it was with Brendan Rodgers when he left Celtic. Sometimes you just cannot afford to turn down that seat at a top table, or the seat that gives you a chance at that, really. The other way of looking,
But it really has nothing to do with that. It's really the
yeah,
boards. Like,
I think so. Yeah,
to
yeah,
forget about all that.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
100% sure it
I
is.
completely agree with you. I mean, I don't think for a second Vinny wants to leave Anderlecht, and I've no doubt at all. You know, he's Anderlecht through and through, and I absolutely believe that. I mean, a lot of Anderlecht fans, as Joris was saying, are quite angry and hurt about all of this tonight, and I understand that because I've been there myself in a very similar situation with Brendan Rodgers, but I think the feelings around that kind of will pass. And it was the same for Rodgers as well. He faced a situation where do I take this unexpected seat at the top table, or do I stay here and potentially the gloss come off my good work and the chance of that going, knowing that the board behind me aren't able to support my own objectives. And I think there was probably a disagreement there. I think ultimately is Vinny's the one who's going to come out the winner here longer term. I think. I don't think this will damage him in the long term. Really, whether it damages the current Anderlecht board, I think, is a bigger question, and it might come back to bite them quite significantly. It's unfortunate. It is unfortunate that we've lost a big name, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens at Lotto Park now, because some of the rumours around who might be coming in are equally interesting. And this episode probably isn't the place to kind of discuss or mention who that might be quite yet. We can maybe do that next time we're together. But I wish him well, because everybody loves Vinny. I think, even if some of the Anderlecht fans tonight are just have a little bit of a sore head for things.
Yeah, no, you just reminded me of something, Scott, that I'm probably going to have to go on a little bit of a tangent about, but in the terms of like, if you've got an aim, if your aim is to manage in the Premier League and like getting into the Championship, obviously you are that little bit closer to it. A couple of friends of mine at university, we did a thing on Football Manager where you had to start unemployed, but the aim of the game was to get into the Premier League, or like then you won the game. So you're at different clubs, and if you get offered like a championship job, you're like, oh, but that's going to take me one step closer. But if I stay in this job, maybe I'll win the league and my reputation will be even higher, and then I can go get the Premier League job. But you just have to balance these things. So companies just has to think about everything that we had to think about during that. So if you need some advice, you should just come and talk to us, because we're very experienced having played that game, and I didn't win, unfortunately. I think I came very close. But yeah, I think I completely agree with you. I think it is the board, and I think from what I've seen from fans on kind of socials and stuff, that is kind of where the anger is directed at, because I think it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I think, what you're also saying about tempering expectations at the club, like what are the expectations? What do they think was happening? Because it was clear that something was being built and progress was being made. They just needed to be quite patient with it and kind of accept that. But yeah, like you said, Scott, we've had some names fly around. I think you're right. I think we'll park those until we get a little bit more like kind of clarity on that situation, who it's going to be. Unfortunately, unlike some of the other clubs that only go for bald managers, I think Anderlecht might be a little bit outside of that. So you can't throw your name into the hat at this moment in time, as we tried to throw your hat in a couple of times last week. But I think that's kind of, we've probably said everything there is to say about that one now. I wish them all the best as well. I've Loved having him in the league. I know I'll get to see a bit more of him when they play Reading next year. Get to watch his possession game in the flesh if he does stick to the possession game and probably play us off the park. But fingers crossed, we'll beat him and then he can get promoted and be happy. Unless something does come out, and we will talk about it. Let's kind of move on. We'll jump down to the second tier. This is basically just a whole talk about managers, by the way. So if you're interested in managerial changes, like stick with us because there's a lot to get through. Really interesting hire actually in the second tier at Denza. Like we've spoken about a Japanese manager coming in, but we've always presumed if a Japanese manager was given a chance in Belgium, it would be at St. Truden. However, Denza have done it. They've hired Takahisa Shirashi. Apologies if that's not how you pronounce it. If you do know how to pronounce it, please do let me know. I'd love to actually get the name right. Really interesting hire. They've gone from Wim de Decker, who's obviously had experience of getting promotion from 1B. They've gone for Takahisa, who's looking at what he's done in football. He's never really been the top man, I don't think, in anywhere he's been, but he's worked at Barcelona. He's worked quite closely with Honda, the former AC Milan player. It looked like he did quite a lot of work with him in terms of analytics and stuff. He's then been at St. Truden, obviously. He also, in his interview, spoke about he's got lots of experience of working in Europe. Like, he's not a Japanese, like a J1 or J League coach coming over. He is someone that's basically spent most of their last couple of years of their career in Europe and kind of around the European football game. So it is an interesting one, isn't it? Scott, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about him, but it's not what we thought would happen. We always presumed if a Japanese manager came in, it would be someone from the J League who's done well there, but this isn't that.
Yeah, it is a really interesting one, and I was a little bit surprised by this one. I've got to be honest. We know, and some of our listeners might not know this, but just to recap briefly, Denza were recently acquired by a new Singapore-based investment company, ACA, which is a kind of sports investment, marketing and media company, and they intend to build a portfolio of clubs across Europe and Asia. Much like City Football Group and Bolt Holdings and the Pacific Media Group, all who have Belgian connections of their own. And Denza are the kind of pilot club, if you like. That's the first club that they've purchased. So they have grand plans to develop the stadium and the training infrastructure at the club, which are already progressing. And as part of that, a few weeks ago, Wim de Decker, who had a decent season, albeit they weren't able to get promotion to 1A, left with mutual agreement with the club. And I felt that when Wim left, that there was obviously a disagreement about direction in some way, which appears to have happened because they've appointed Takahisa Shirashi in the last few days, 46-year-old Japanese coach, as Ben was saying. And Shirashi was actually on the board at Denza. He came into the board when the new owners came in. Was previously at St. Truden for a number of years as their under-21 coach. And I think it was the owners at St. Truden that really recommended him to ACA. That's my understanding of it. He spent a period as well as the assistant at Excelsior Rotterdam in the Netherlands as well, when they were in the division below the Eredivisie as well. And also going back a few years, he spent time at Barcelona's academy as a youth coach, working with the under-12 side there. So he is, the main thing to take away from this, I think, is he is very much unproven as a T1 at the moment. And that's the most interesting thing about it. But they have sent out heavy signals, the club, since they made this appointment, that they're prepared to be patient and build this. They know that they're not going to necessarily be a 1A side at the first attempt. So I wish him well, because I think for lots of reasons, I think Takahisa having a reasonably successful run at this at Denza is quite important for a number of reasons. But it's definitely a pretty interesting one.
Yeah, no, it is really interesting. I'm really intrigued to see how it goes. I think it's just good for the game in that sense. Like we've spoken about how like representation and stuff like that, and it's just nice to see someone of a different nationality in the dugout. Like we just don't see Japanese, Korean, like just thinking of some of the big Asian leagues. We just don't see those managers coming over and managing in Europe or anything like that. So, yes, his background's slightly different, but my kind of theory on this is if he does a good job, St. Truden will eventually have him as their manager, because I just feel like that's just how it's going to go. Just kind of makes sense in that sense. But yeah, very interesting to see how that one pans out.
My theory is the answer is a train wreck and it will not end well with that club. But okay, I'm just not holding back today, it seems. But yeah, just to be fair, yeah, I would be very fearful of a fans of fan for what the whole takeover situation. And yeah, now this like it's an experiment, but do you, which is maybe nice, but do you want that at your own club at this stage of the own club? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I think you're. I think there's definitely risk involved, isn't there? I think it could all unravel or it could go really well. I feel like it's going to go one of two ways, isn't it? We'll see. They've obviously got some recruiting to do as well because they've lost a couple of players. So it'd be interesting to see kind of what direction they take in and how much say he's going to have in that. It's I always find it funny when someone who's been like in a slightly higher up position then takes over as manager. It's kind of like, well, I'll do it because I think I can do a good job, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'll just take it on myself. But yeah, anyway, Scott, you were saying?
I was just going to say that there's something kind of unique almost to 1B here in thinking about it, and that is that it's very important because 1B is very physical as a league, actually. I mean, both 1A and 1B are physical leagues, but 1B is particularly physical, I think, and I think all of the sides there have to get a balance between the kind of youth and experience in the squad. And you kind of touched on some really important. They've lost a couple of really important players, I think, in their first team goalkeeper and Yusuf Chaluk, who've both gone to Kortrijk. And I think longer term they're going to start working with younger players now, which I think is the right approach. But just because you have a coach who has some kind of background in that, that doesn't necessarily mean it's all going to click as well. So it is risky. And I think Joris's point about Joris is saying, I'm not entirely convinced they know what they're doing. I would agree with that. I have seen some little signals that suggest that they have a clear idea of what they want to do, but that it's not necessarily right for this club kind of at this moment. So I suppose the question is, are they prepared for a sort of, 2 to 4 year plan rather than, expecting, serious results kind of straight away? And that's a question that only the ACA owners can answer, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're not realistic in that sense, we've seen so many clubs in Belgium that have gone out of business and stuff like that. I mean, like the owners of, was it Roselaar, who are currently the owners of my club, Reading, and you guys have heard me not say too many complimentary things about those people as owners because they don't really know what they're doing and they just chuck a load of money at things and then hope that it works, which they've done at 2 clubs already. One in China, which is now doesn't exist, and then Roselaar, who obviously don't exist in the same format either. So yeah, be careful. I think it's all about how you spend your money rather than like and what you spend your money on if you're going to spend it. So yeah, patience is obviously the key as well. Like don't overreach your limits. I think we heard from Alex at USG, didn't we, when he was speaking about lots of clubs move up the tiers of kind of what they're going to pay players a little bit too quickly. And when things start to go south, they go really, really south because you've over kind of extended yourself a little bit too much. He'll be faced, or he will be facing in the dugout at Beerschot a new manager. Looks like Andreas Weiland is the new manager of Beerschot. Another interesting hire in the sense he's not done a lot of managerial stuff at first team kind of level. A lot of under 18s like St. Pölten in Austria under 18s, Austria's under 17s, a couple of assistant manager stints, director of football with St. Pölten under 18s. So a lot of young kind of player moves. And then his most recent position has been with Lask, obviously took over from Dominic Thalhammer, who moved over to Cercle Bruges. So maybe Beerschot are looking for a Lask special, i.e. like Thalhammer did. Scott, back to you again on this one. What do we know about Andreas Weiland, the Austrian manager that's coming in to try and revive Beerschot after what was a terrible season?
Well, there's an interesting Belgian connection in this one, you know what I mean, which you've already alluded to. I mean, I think he has a background in amateur football in Austria, and much like, it reminds me a little bit of Wouter Franken and somebody who might just might be coming in to replace Wouter Rankin at Mechelen. Danny Boyce, former Groningen manager, and he also has a big background in amateur football as well, working his way up. But yeah, Andreas Weiland, 38-year-old kind of Austrian, does have a track record of working with young players, which is going to be really important for Beerschot because they are going through quite a big restructuring process of kind of their sort of sporting infrastructure, as well as building a new academy and training facilities. They're obviously going to lose really the core of the side that was in 1A. A lot of the quality that was there is leaving. We now know that. And we know that they're going to prioritise, hopefully, quality young Belgian players to lead their promotion charge back to 1A. He's known for a kind of high tempo, pressing, aggressive game. Unsurprisingly, as a Lask T2, spent a number of years at Lask, of course, under Dominic Talhammer, now at Circle. And it would be rather interesting to see the two guys matching up. Obviously, that's not going to happen unless they're drawn in the Belgian Cup next year, which maybe it will. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, an exciting young coach who's developing his career, and I think this is quite a good move from his point of view. Actually, it's quite exciting for him. I don't think this is a bad appointment. That's my reaction to it. Particularly if they're restructuring their sporting department completely, then obviously he's had assurances about what's going to happen and been able to bring his own staff in. So this looks like a reasonably positive one. And I know that Beerschot have been working with quite a lot of external consultants to try and identify the best kind of sporting infrastructure for the next few years to put in some place something longer term, which I think is the right thing to do, because the reality is over the last couple of years they've made some really bad sporting decisions. So involving a wider network of people in making new ones, I think is kind of quite a good move. So likewise with the other new appointments, wish him well, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I can't add much, but it's nice to see that someone that's exactly to the day 10 year older than me still called a young man manager. So all is not
There's
lost
still
for
time.
myself.
There's still time. You got 10 years to get there, Joris. There's still so much time. No, yeah, thanks for that, Scott. You've been put through your paces this week, we're safe to say, with all these new managers. But we are finally going to hear a little bit more from Joris with this next one. So we have spoken about whether we think Stork will stay at Genk. We've spoken about a couple of weeks as the pressure kind of mounted as the season came to an end. He's gone, and he's gone straight to Eupen. Just got in his car, probably just packed the stuff of his desk, put it in the car, and just drove straight over them, unpacked it onto the into the Eupen office. Joris, what's your kind of opinion on this one? I mean, I know at the kind of last couple of episodes you said you were happy to move on from Stork. What's your kind of? Do you think he's gone to a club that is more befitting of his level and kind of the type of manager he is in terms of up against it, under a couple of restrictions and a little bit of a rebuild needed?
Well, I would disagree with that I said that. To be fair, I was never really against Stork, and I've never really said that either. I think, but I understand now though that it's that you would move on. But I do think he's a good fit for Eupen though, because even with Genk, he did manage, even if it didn't look that way, he did manage to get the defense a bit more in order. I believe under his spell they were among the top defenses in Belgium. Of course, after not having the best of defense, so it goes a bit under the radar. And I think this is very important for Eupen, because Eupen, we all have a bit of a worry for them, I guess, for next season. And I think this is a really good building block for them, and it might make a difference for them. We'll have to see, of course, how he does it. But in recent years, he's always been performing quite well with smaller teams, and I don't see a reason why that would not work with Eupen. Also, in a sense of, even if they would lose some players, he can put an organization together, and that's easier, even if you're not necessarily have all the quality in there, but like you can still build a team around some organization and in that way scrape some points together. And well, I do think it's a good appointment for them. I wish him all the best there. Yeah, and he did have some weird formations in the last few weeks, I think, but yeah, well, that doesn't matter anymore anyway. So that not much to say about that. I never really was against him, even though he did have some yeah, weird things in his mind at times. I wasn't always happy with his formations, but the results were not that bad, to be fair. But not good enough, but not it could have been worse. And it's always difficult to take over in the middle of a season.
Yeah, I think this one, I completely agree with Joris. I think this is a really good appointment by Eupen, and I do, like Joris, think this increases the chances of them staying up next season, despite the worries that we've all got about them. They have made a couple of signings actually over the last couple of days. A couple of young players who've come in who I think are very much going to be part of the A squad. Going into next season as well. Yeah, great appointment for them. We've known, I think this was coming for a few days as far as the open side of things was certainly concerned. I think leaving Genk has been a bit unfortunate, really. I think it just hasn't really worked. I don't think Stork has completely seen eye to eye with some of the politics going on inside the club. Coming back to internal politics, I think that's been a factor. It's really unfortunate that he's never really had a transfer window at Genk at all to really kind of get to grips with his coach as well. That's unfortunate for him because he came in at a point where obviously the season is largely lost in terms of what their ultimate objectives were. And there are players he was working with there who I think didn't want to be there. I think there are players there that the club didn't want to be there. So I think he was looking at it now in a pretty difficult situation, and what he did achieve actually wasn't too bad when you consider things in the fuller kind of context. I think they want to go in a slightly different direction. I think they want to find somebody who fits the template that they would like to play, and I'm not sure Stork is the coach who fits that template best. That's what I think about it, and that's just everybody being honest about mutually deciding to go their ways. And this is where Stork at Eupen is a great appointment, because I think Eupen's expectations are just to maintain their 1A status. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're going through a huge period of change there as well, with a lot of players leaving, and obviously Michael Volkanis, the coach, left. They've got a new coach in now, and a coach who has great experience of keeping sides in 1A. He's performed the Great Escape before at Circle. He's very experienced. He's very solid defensively, having been a defender in his playing days, obviously, as well. And I think he brings all of the right qualities of that experience and that solidity into a side that has been lacking that and is going to need that as part of a major rebuild. And also the pressure slightly less for obvious reasons as well. Nobody's expecting too much of them, which allows him to go about his work and get a bit of a run at this pre-season now, coming in at probably the best possible time if you're going to do that as well. So, good appointment for Eupen. And good luck to Burns. It's good that he's staying around, because I think he's actually a pretty decent coach.
Agree. Yeah, I think I probably did misquote you a little bit there, Joris. Apologies for that. But yeah, I mean, just looking at Eupen as well, they've already, if my maths are correct, I think they've already signed more players in these last couple of weeks than they did the whole of last summer. I think last summer they only signed Johan Durm, but they've already brought in another defender in Jan Golenk from Muller, and then they've brought over the youngster Luna Pashuiza from KV Mechelen. So they've already done a little bit of business there. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot to do, because Ganaka, Kools, Ngoy, Himmelman, Amat, like the whole defence needs complete restructuring. Central midfield probably needs a little bit of restructuring as well. They've got some like reasonably exciting young players, but I can't imagine Prevoyak's going to stay, and they may have to sell him to finance a couple of the other like moves that they actually need to make. So he's got his work cut out, but I think it definitely feels like the right sort of appointment. It's just whether they're going to give him the time that he probably needs to keep them in the league. And if they're not going to be a little bit trigger happy like they were earlier in the season with Clammer when he was there and started doing a good job, and then as things started to slide, they gave him the axe. So we will keep our eyes on that and keep our eyes on what sort of moves they make in the transfer market, because there's going to be quite a few. Next manager, wow, this is such a list, isn't it? Club Brugge have been very quick to announce their new manager, with Schroeder going off to Ajax. It's Hoefkens. Hoefkens just basically been promoted from within to take over as T1 at Club Brugge. Scott, again, a quick little roundup on Hoefkens. I know that many people probably won't know who he is because he did come from the internal kind of promotion from within, but it's always nice to see a club going within sometimes to kind of find the new manager. And yeah, over to you.
Well, Karl Hoefkens is an interesting one as well, because, you know, as you were saying, Ben, he's already been inside Club Brugge for a number of years now. Mechelen, interestingly, actually had him quite high on their shortlist as a replacement for Wouter Franken, and Hoefkens turned Mechelen down. He said he was happy to stay at Brugge at the moment because I think he knew there was a possibility of him being able to step up. Which he's now done. He's obviously an ex-Bruges player. You know, Bruges fans will tell you he's got 166 caps for Bruges, which is pretty decent actually over a 4-year spell between 2009 and 2013. But he's been inside the club working away at a coaching level since 2018. He's been working with the under-18s and the under-21s, and also working within the scouting department there. So when he retired as a player, he spent a short period as a scout with Knock before going back to Bruges, and he's very highly thought of there. I think this is kind of been coming, actually. I don't think this is a shock inside the club. I think the board trust him because they know him and feel that he's ready, and clearly they've sounded out the squad, I would imagine, to a point internally like that as well. This is an interesting one because he did have other options, but, you know, long-standing connection with Belgian football as well. As a player, spent time at Oostende, Liège, Beerschot. Although Beerschot in a previous incarnation, when there was Germinal Beerschot, Westerlo, Lommel, and he also spent a period in England as well. He played with West Brom and Stoke during his playing days. So, Karl Hoefkens, the new T1 at the Jan Breidel.
Yeah, as a player, he was part of the championship winning team of Lierse as well.
Yeah, that's right.
At the end of the 90s. To give a bit more context there. As a manager, well, difficult to say. This is a decision that has already been made earlier on, I believe, because you could see him coaching in the last few games of Club Brugge, actually more than Schreuder at times, out of the dugout. So internally, that decision had already been made. It will be interesting to see. I guess they do trust in him, that he's not going the Clement way, because he had to go through a few other clubs before he came back to Club Brugge after being an assistant manager there. Or maybe they saw we don't want to wait this time, and they saw that, they look back at that way and it's like, okay, maybe we can just give it a go now. I guess I would say, like, based on his playing career, I would not necessarily see a good coach in him, but that's based on not much actually, just obviously. So I can't say much on his managerial things. No, I can't say much. We'll have to see how it goes. Internally, they trust it. Who are we to doubt that at the moment, I suppose? Although, to be fair, I have my doubts a bit, but that's based on not much. Can't say much.
I feel like that's kind of everything around this appointment, isn't it? It's just kind of like we can't. There's not really much to say because it's like, well, we literally just have to wait and see, like, how he gets on.
You would just have expected a big name or something, and this is not the case. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, of course. So we'll have to wait and see, as with every coach, obviously, talking cliches.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on though, Joris. I think you do just have to wait and see, and it's not. You don't always need the big name. Like, someone internally could just be the perfect man at the perfect opportunity. And again, like most other clubs, like we just don't know what form Club Brugge's squad is going to take next season. There's so many rumours flying around about their big players moving on. So yeah, again, we shall wait and see. Another playoff team moving on from their manager. I mean, at the end of like the next couple of months, everyone in 1A could have a different manager to when they finish the season. You know, it's just absolutely mental at the moment. Brian Frisk sacked by Antwerp pretty much happened straight after that game on Sunday, didn't it? It was kind of very much kind of, we knew it was going to happen. I don't think there's much else to really say on it. I think because we've known it's been coming, we've kind of been talking about how we feel about it for quite a while. However, it looks like Mark van Bommel is going to be the new Antwerp manager. Joris, as Scott's done a lot of the talk, I'll go to you first on this one. What's your kind of feelings about Van Bommel as the new Antwerp man?
I'm glad he's not coming to hate, to be fair. But everything I'm saying here again, especially with these coaches, we'll have to wait and see. I could be completely wrong in literally all of my judgments here, but well, I based on his track record, I'm not convinced by him. We'll have to see whether that makes a difference in the end. Of course, he also brings some people in as well. Well, there's a controversial one with John Stegeman, who also had a drink driving incident in the Netherlands a few years ago as a coach at Zwolle, I believe. So, well, at least there's still these dubious appointments a bit. I guess that with Overmars is not the last one, potentially. But yeah, what he can do with his network, I guess that's probably... Yeah, Overmars brings his network, and then together maybe Van Bommel is a big name, of course, as a player as well. So he definitely also has a network. Otherwise, he would not land jobs at PSV, at Wolfsburg, and now at Antwerp, even despite not being the biggest of successes at either of those other clubs. But we do know that Antwerp will have a great start to the season next season, though, because he always starts really well at his clubs. So that's that, and maybe with a head start, maybe they can continue this run. We'll see.
I think this move kind of confirms what we already knew, and that was that Antwerp were going to be splashing the cash. Or splashing Big Paul Gayson's cash, big time this summer. There's going to be a huge turnaround of players there, I think. I think a lot are going to be leaving and a lot are going to be coming in. And I think we can expect some reasonably big names to be coming in as part of the Overmars and kind of Van Bommel network. I think it is fair to say. I think the approach of necessarily chucking money at this is obviously risky. That kind of goes without saying, but I think we know the ambitions at Antwerp are absolutely massive, and we know that they're desperate to close the gap on Bruges. So this was always going to be their approach. I agree with Joris in that I have my doubts as to whether this is the right appointment, but I think the appointment probably says more about who might be coming in terms of players than it does anything else. It gives us a clue about that. As well. So really interesting one, this, because I think it's important that Antwerp are in a place where they can put in a strong challenge next year, because everything's up in the air now at Anderlecht, who looked like they were going to be in a position to maybe be a credible challenger next year potentially, and we don't know whether that's going to be the case now because of the big news today. So many unknowns at the moment, but exciting times.
Yeah, I mean, it's really shaping up next year to be quite an interesting one in terms of like we just mentioned with Club Brugge, the new manager in Hoefkins, and then Van Bommel. I mean, I remember when he got hired by Wolfsburg, and a lot of German football analysts were just like, I think, was it Jasmine Baba? I think she's one of the top German football analysts. Was just like, this is the disaster waiting to happen, and it was a disaster waiting to happen because a couple of months later he was sacked. So I don't know. I feel like with your guys' reservations, I have reservations about it as well. And I'm just like, you've got kind of a squad, or you've got like something in place there that could be could challenge the title, but you need to get it right. I just don't know if this is the right appointment. I feel like maybe they're just going to waste another year not having the right manager or the right squad in place. But hopefully, in terms of a league standpoint, they will be up there and they will be challenging for the title, because the bigger kind of pool of teams we have challenging for the title, the more exciting it is. So again, we shall wait and C, non-manager news now. We finally got through all of that. What a mission. Pro League restructuring plans. I mean, if we dive into this, we could be here all night. This is just one of the most convoluted and slightly confusing system ever that's ever been proposed in the history of football, I believe, because it's just basically, I guess, kind of the highlights from it are we're getting rid of the halving of points in the playoffs, which I can imagine is quite popular with a lot of people, extending playoff 1 to be 6 teams, but then everyone else is in playoff 2. Those top 6 teams will battle it out for the places in Europe. However, if you finish 5th and 6th, that's it. You don't have a chance at Europe. But if you finish 7th in playoff 2, you play the bottom team in playoff 1 for a chance at Europe. So you could finish 7th and have a better chance of getting into Europe than the team that finishes 5th and 6th. Make of that what you will. Then there's everyone is fine out to not be relegated out of the rest of the teams. You could also finish 7th and get relegated potentially. I mean, it's unlikely to happen, given that we're getting rid of halving of points. And I believe there's going to be no halving of points in playoff 2 as well, or like a start from 0. But you could finish 7th and get relegated. Like, that's just how wild it is. The league is then also being cut down to 14 teams. So it's going to be a lot smaller, with a bigger 1B, who then have, I think, 2 teams get straight up promoted, or under this rule would get straight up promoted. Then I think it's maybe from 3rd to 10th. Don't quote me on that. Oh, in another playoff. Everyone else is just as they are. If you finish bottom, you've been relegated. Those teams that are in that kind of other playoff then battle it out for a spot to play. I think 2 of those teams play teams in the top, and then there's a final playoff game between 2 final teams to see who gets relegated, or they both play a game against a team in 1A and they can either switch places or not. It's as you can tell, like, it's very confusing. There should be a vote on it on the 2nd of June. Not sure. I think from what we've heard that it's gonna go through. I think from just what I looked at it, I think there needs to be a little bit more work done to kind of be like, right, is this actually the best way? Like, yes, if we want to go down the 14 team 1A, like, how do we get there? And then how do we make it so that 1B is super competitive as well? And like, you keep kind of the competitiveness between the 2 leagues, and that when teams come up, they can like fight it out when they get there. But guys, I'm happy to pass this over to hear your thoughts on the confusing situation that is this, but I just don't feel like this is going to become reality yet. And I feel like it's going to have to be worked out a little bit more before we get to what is actually going to happen in a couple of years' time.
Yes, I do believe so as well. And I'm not even going to comment too much on it, but it does feel like it is more like a smoke screen to actually eventually almost come back to the situation that we were before the 18 team. So I do think we're actually evolving into a situation where it will be 16 teams, and then maybe playoffs. That there could be some works on the playoffs, but I actually expect it to evolve in that direction. 16 teams, 6 teams in playoffs, with or without halving. That's maybe is still a point of debate. Then, but we'll see about that. But that's just my feeling, and that's why I'm also not going to comment too much on this system. Although I do see some good aspects in it as well, like the amount of teams across both leagues. It should give a bit more dynamic between 1A and 1B, which should make the smaller teams less, well, just as a season in 1B is not necessarily a bad thing. You can build better instead of trying to hold on in 1A, for example, and rebuild quicker and have a reasonable chance of getting promoted straight away or soon anyway as well. But that are the bigger things in it. That all the small regulations and all, it's a bit even more convoluted than it is right now, maybe even so. That I'm not going to comment too much on that. I just hope actually as well that it is more of a smokescreen.
Yeah, as Ben was saying, I think the vote on the 2nd at the moment looks like it might not have enough support to get through the current proposal through. So we'll see what happens. There's plenty to like in this proposal, but there's also things that actually make things even more complex. I think the abolishing of the halving of points, I think, is a progression in any structure. But as Joris was saying, the exact number of the teams, I think, is up for debate a little bit still, and we still need to determine quite how we're going to get back to 16 teams, even if we are going to get to 14, which is what this proposal is kind of suggesting in 1A. But, as of recording, we still don't know how many teams are going to be up for relegation next season yet. That's not been completely signed off. So there are, there's a couple of more important things to, I suppose, agree ahead of this proposal.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, whatever is decided, we'll bring it to you through our social media accounts. So if it is agreed, which we don't think it will be, but if it is, we'll try and explain it in a much better way than I just tried to there. Moving on, so just a couple more things to talk about. I mean, one thing we're all kind of looking forward to, I know the domestic season's over, but there is a massive derby coming up in the Nations League. The Netherlands, are coming to Belgium on the 3rd of June. I think I'm right in saying, guys, it's sold out already, this one, so it should be a cracking atmosphere. And I mean, you only have to look at the reactions from Belgian fans when, I think, was it Mathieu van der Poel won the Tour of Flanders, or he won one race in Belgium, and my mate who was there said everyone just walked off. No one clapped or anything. They were just like, nah, not having that. Can't have a Dutch man coming in winning our cycling race. So it transcends all sorts of sporting rivalries, this one. So it should be a classic, hopefully, one thing that can spice up the Nations League in this one. And then we also want to say congratulations to Tisu Dali, who won the Ebony Shoe Award for 2022. I mean, take him out of that Ghent side and they're a completely different team. So fully deserved for him there. And I think that's probably it for this episode, guys. I mean, we've managed to fit in a almost regularly length episode without talking about any of the matches, which I think is quite impressive. Looking ahead to kind of the weeks to come, we will hopefully be sitting down and putting together our annual awards ceremony, or annual awards for the Pro Leagues, getting the categories, discussing team of the season. I mean, I think I've got 3 team of the season saved on my phone at the moment, so I've got to somehow try and whittle that down, because you think of one player and then you're like, oh, but this one, so a couple for each position. But we can debate that till the cows come home, I'm sure. We then also will bring you a special episode. We're going to sit down with James Kelly, whose book has recently gone out, so it's available now, titled Golden, Why Belgian Football is More Than One Generation. Scott and I have already got our hands on a copy. Joris's is hopefully on its way. And I mean, so far so good. Really, really enjoying it. James does such a good job of covering like the stories and stuff from Belgian football history, and we really can't wait to sit down with him and have a chat over basically how he went about writing the book, kind of all his opinions and stuff like that. We will also hopefully be doing a giveaway. We do have a copy to give away, but we'll announce more probably during that episode and give you a kind of a way of entering the competition to win that. I'm sure, yeah, if you don't win that, you should definitely just get your hands on one, because it is a really, really good book. And I think that's pretty much all announcements sorted. As always, Joris and Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure this season chatting Belgian football with the two of you. I mean, it's been a good one. Very much looking forward to debating our kind of awards and getting stuck in already to the next season and bringing on a bumper preview as we did this year. We're definitely going to do one for next season. But as always, guys, it's been a pleasure.
Cheers, it's been great, and onwards and upwards, guys, and we'll see you soon, everybody. Plenty more to come from us.
Yeah, and well, since we mentioned the Ebony Shoe Award, I guess we should also mention that the Professional Football Player of the Year is Dennis Undav. That's also decided already. But I'm sure we will also get there in the awards episodes when we compare notes. But just to give that to the listener already as well, the listener that would not know yet, of course. But always a pleasure, and I'll see you soon. Please watch our space. Still, even though the season is done, it's going to be less, but there is still going to be content produced, obviously, as already been mentioned before. But watch this space.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention the Undav one, but I think whoever we give our player of the year to is definitely far more important than the Professional Footballers Association. I mean, it just carries so much more weight. Like, I'm sure Big Paul Onuachu tells everyone that he won the player of the season from the Belgian Football Podcast last season. Probably his proudest moment. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed it, please do leave us a review. You can also get in touch with us in all the usual ways, Twitter or through the email as well. And we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.